Well, other than the CBSE, the second central scheme is the Indian Certificate of Secondary Education (ICSE). It seems that this was started as a replacement for the Cambridge School Certificate. The idea was mooted in a conference held in 1952 under the chairmanship of Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad, the then Minister for the Education. And the main purpose of the conference was to consider the replacement of the overseas Cambridge School Certificate examination by an all India examination. In the month of October in the year 1956, all the meetings of Interstate Board for Anglo-Indian Education, where a proposal was adopted for the setting up of Indian Council to administer the University of Cambridge local examinations, syndicates the examination in India, and to advise the syndicate on the best way to adapt its examinations to the country needs. And where the inaugural meeting of council held, and then with the particular responsibilities and agreements, now a large number of schools across the country are affiliated to this council. All these are private schools and generally cater to children from wealthy families. Both the CBSE and the ICSE Council conducts their own examinations in schools across the country that are affiliated to them at the end of 10 years of schooling. Well, that is after higher education, and again at the end of 12 years after higher secondary education. Admission to the 11th class is normally based on the performance in this All India examination, since this puts a lot of pressure on the child to perform well. There have been suggestions to remove the examinations at the end of 10 years. Education in India is a very special subject, and the patterns of education system in India vary, and also the streams of education system is much to know to dig in. So we have to understand many patterns of Indian education system. We have a caller to discuss something more about it. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Hello, sir. Sir, can we understand more about the education patterns in India?
Exactly. The education in India broadly is divided into three categories or segmentations. They are the primary schooling, then the secondary schooling, and later senior secondary, and which is in some areas called as junior college also. But mostly it is a kind of 10+2 system of education, that 10 years of education being broken into two divisions. First 5 years comes under the category of the primary schooling, which is very vital because that is where the student is actually attached to the school or the process of schooling. Then later, when he completes that primary part of education, naturally he will be in a position, he will be mature enough to enter into that senior level of education, wherein the concepts of education are driven into his mind. And later, after the completion of the first 10 years of the education, he will be given extra 2 years of schooling, which is very, very important because that is where all these kinds of groupings and other things take place. There the student is for the first time made to choose some sort of specialization which is suitable or suited to his acumen or which is according to his passion for that particular stream of learning. So after the first 10 years of education, which is common to everyone, the specialization begins. Then after the specialization for 2 years, he will be entering some professional college or art college or some college of some professional schooling or literary schooling of his choice, which is called the graduation, undergraduation. And later, after the completion of the bachelor's degree, he will be made to choose a finer subject in his master's course, and still later, if the student is keen enough to pursue something on the doctoral research, he will be applying himself for the PhD programs, which select only a select few candidates, because there the question of guide is very, very important. There will be 1-to-1 ratio, one guide per student. So admission into PhD program is a very stiff thing. There, after completing PhD also, some ambitious students will try to further their knowledge through postdoctoral programs also. There the student will focus on a very tiny bit of knowledge. He will force all his energies and try to create something very new to the world. So in the higher echelons of knowledge learning, the student is made to create knowledge. So that is the wonderful course of learning which is present in India now. The student joins as a novice in the primary schooling, and finally when he completes doctoral or postdoctoral, he will end up as the creator of knowledge. Something very new, valuable to the society. And that is how the system of education is going on presently.
So,
and
sir,
for this, yes, please go on.
Yes, sir. So, as we have discussed about the system of education in India as divided into 4 different age groups according, and then,
Yes.
so if we collaborate with this kind of streams of education system with the boards of education system, so
Exactly.
We have CBSE, ICSE, IB and the state board, and also
Yes.
if the same pattern is followed in every board or if it is vary from board to board.
Actually, it is more or less the same with all the boards, but only difference is that the way the knowledge is imparted is quite different from one system. Like the state board has its own approach, the CBSE has one more approach, and ICSE. All the different streams of knowledge have got their own kind of imparting learning to the students. So, depending upon the focus of the knowledge which is imparted by these boards, the student will excel accordingly. So, according to me, the best thing is those who are from the rural background, it is better for them to complete their primary schooling in their own mother tongue, and from the senior level of education, that is secondary level of education, it is better for them to choose either CBSE or ICSE according to the acumen of the student, and then further his knowledge and sharpen their abilities to take up the challenges of the professional course which is in offering after the 10+2 schooling.
So, sir, on the same line, as we discussed about the boards,
Yes.
now if
Yes.
we have a focus on the type of schools, like
Yes.
we have public schools, private schools, government schools,
Exactly.
and international schools, national open schools, special needs
Yes.
schools. So we have different kinds of schools. So does
Exactly.
these schools follow the same pattern or it varies?
Actually, this is a very nice question, because the schooling which is imparted in the governmental institutions has got a kind of focus which is relevant to the society, because the government always keeps in its view the prevailing situations and the economic viability of most of its citizens, and then makes a plan, charts out a strategy accordingly. But when you come to the private institutions and even the international schools, there in the private institutions, they are a sort of commercialization of knowledge is very predominantly seen, because their very purpose is to make a profit out of this particular schooling venture. For them, it's a kind of venture, like how the real estate is a venture for some people. Even schooling, education is a kind of venture for them. So when it is a question of venture, naturally the commerciality will play its own part. And that is why they inculcate so many things, like the external uniforms, then shoes, then books, then even all the external paraphernalia. They say it has to be taken only from that particular school campus only.
Okay.
Student is not given the freedom to take the same things at a lesser cost outside. They are very much available. But they are not, they are forced only to collect it from their own campuses. There, all these kinds of profit and other things are made by the private schools.
Yes.
And second thing is that the private schools, just because they want to brand their image in the society, they force upon the student to slog for n number of hours without even taking into active consideration the mental health, physical ability of the students who are pursuing education in their institution. They force upon the students to grasp that knowledge, which is really an unhealthy situation, because knowledge has to be imparted so naturally, so gently, so softly, that the student should not even know that he is learning something new. That is the actual way of imparting knowledge. But here, so many student suicides. I hope you are also in touch with the news outside.
Yes,
that so many student suicides are seen, which is a very rare phenomenon for the Indian society, which is considered very conservative. It is because the student is not able to cope up with the tension, coercion, tension with regards to the syllabus, coercion of the teachers and other people who are specially meant for making the students complete so many study hours. So all these things are having a detrimental effect upon the students, and they cannot even tell the same thing, share the same things with their parents also, because parents, after having paid a huge sum of money to the tune of 1 lakh or 2 lakhs, they are really helpless. They only say their words to do what the teacher says.
Yes.
So the student is in a kind of fix, and that's why to escape from such a horrible situation, sometimes they feel that suicide is the only resort. And sometimes some people are having some kind of lifestyle diseases also. They are being sent back to their homes. So such is the calamity with the private institutions. And with regard to the third category which you have mentioned, that is the international schools, there the situation is completely different. There only the well-off can enter into such institutions. Their textbook knowledge is limited. It is almost patterned on the lines of IB and Cambridge. So the textbook knowledge is limited. There more focus is on the activity-based learning.
Yes.
Students are taken to the labs, they are taken to the field work, they are made to work outside, get in touch with the world. They are often taken to some countries also, depending upon that school. I heard that one school took a batch of students to NASA US also. So it's all about, like, the well-off can afford for any foreign travel, everything. So the international schools are really making a fine amount of, they are trying to capitalize on the whims and fancies of the parents.
True, sir. True.
So that is how this vicious circle is happening in our country.
Well, sir, if we keep on discussing about this 10th standard, like most of the student has a dilemma, what next after 10th? So it's a very popular question among youngsters nowadays, and in the tertiary education, if they want to go ahead, they will opt for the intermediate and choose some selective subject groups and all, but when they want to go for the vocational, they have a limited options to choose for, as the professional opportunities are very lacking in our country. So, what is your suggestion for the 10th class students passed out? What can they take if they go for vocational or Tier 2 education? What can be the best for them?
Yeah, according to me personally, what I would feel is that what we are really good at and what we really aspire for should be selected by the students. Every student, when he comes to the 10th standard, I hope will be in a position to understand his own merits and demerits. Whether he wants to be analytical or literal or he wants to do something different, he must be having some kind of idea by the time he comes to the 10th standard. And now with the explosion of the knowledge and with the YouTube and other facilities, the students are in touch with most of the issues outside. So at a very young age, they are able to come to some decision. Yes, and they are often breaking new ground also. They are saying, yes, I will become a fashion designer. I will become a kind of journal. I'll make a way into media industry. Like that, they are coming to some kind of conclusive understanding regarding themselves. So it's better that the student analyzes everything and not going by the external things, external attractions. He has to be true to himself. That is the first step for success. Because every field has got its own good and bad elements. So what is good for us, what is good for me, may not be good for the other person. So it is, everyone has to evaluate for himself whether I should take up the science stream or the stream of commerce or the arts. All the streams have got equal validity, because in New Delhi, getting seat in BA is very, very difficult. Because in some colleges like Sriram College, getting seat in BA is very difficult, because most of the students who passed out of that college aspire for IAS and then they crack also in the very first attempt. So humanities are really very important. If the student is really having that aspiration, no doubt he should be encouraged to take up that path. Then if he cracks IAS or other such examination, UPSC examination, he will have a wonderful life of service. He can do a lot of service to the society at large. So many options are there. And regarding science, everyone knows that medicine, engineering, pharmaceutical, so many other options are there. And regarding the commerce, there are so many things like CA, CMA, then CS. So many other professional institutions are giving students a good opportunity to promote their professional wings.
True, sir.
So all the departments, all things are one and the same. What really matters is the real acumen, understanding and the ability of the student. If that matches, really it will be a successful academic life for every student. Most of the students go wrong only here. Just because their friends are taking up a particular stream, they blindly join that. And halfway through, they will realize that they are not meant for that. That is not their cup of coffee. So often they are really bewildered, confused, but nothing could be done at that stage. So everyone has to self-evaluate. This is my advice to the students who have just completed 10th and are aspiring to further their academic growth.
So, for the students who are not willing to take any mathematics subject or science subject, what can be the best option for them to choose? Whether it can be a vocational course or any other group in the intermediate itself. So, for a student who don't want to take mathematics or science, what can we suggest for them to take on?
Actually, as you have been mentioning, vocational stream is very, very important. Actually, some of the best artists or those who have given their best to the world are often from the vocational stream only. That should never be belittled. In fact, some of the greatest artists are from that stream only. The world remembers only such people. Now there are lakhs of engineers. None remembers everyone. But
so do we still have vocational courses?
Yes, they are still present. Government of India has given directions for the schools to conduct vocational education for the students who are really interested in such things. So it is always there.
So like
what really matters
Yes.
is our self-aptitude. That is the critical determining factor. That should be borne in mind by all the students.
That's great, sir. So here, like when we talk about after 10th, whether it is a vocational
Yes.
or whether it is a normal subjects, what can we talk for the, what can we suggest for the students of not willing to take science and mathematics? So,
Yes.
like what kind of vocational courses it will help them to grow? So, if we take about economics or commerce,
Yes.
the opportunities in the society are a very limited one. If they opt for commerce, they must go for CA, which is also comes into the mathematics and all, and which the students are not willing to take up the burden
Yes.
of mathematics.
Yes.
So, to have a easy education through vocational courses and also to play a successful professional life, so what can be the best course of vocational which a student can opt for in these days?
The best vocational course, they are like crafts are there, different crafts he can take up and make a mark in his own life. So such is there. Crafts are there, then home science is there, which is really a kind of springboard for becoming a master chef or taking up BHM course, which is really an international occasion now. So all these things are very much there for the students. So vocational stream also there, since there are so many opportunities and options, there also the self-evaluation and self-aptitude and self-determination plays a significant role.
So like when career counseling after like when we step ahead after intermediate, there also very diverse subjects they will have to face.
Yes.
So once the selection is getting into broader and having a multiple number of choices to have from a multiple number of subjects, how can
Yes.
the student choose them? Because like once they are out from SSC, they
Yes.
have a limited options like a number of 4 to 5, 6 groups for the intermediate. But
Yes.
when they are out after
మీరు
intermediate, they
మాట్లాడే
will get to
వ్యక్తి
see
మీ కాల్ ని
around
హోల్డ్ లో
100
పెట్టారు
number of
దయచేసి
yes. So we get to see 100 number of courses for the graduation. So in that regards, to select certain subject after intermediate, how can they choose in what bodies they can choose their subject to get into the graduation education, sir?
Yeah, this is a wonderful question, I believe. Because here, during the 2 years of intermediate education or +1 and +2, the student has to be quite conscious, because that is for the first time he is pursuing something as a specialized course, because till 10th it was all common and uniform, but the specialization begins only at the level of intermediate. So those 2 years he has to observe himself whether the subjects he has chosen are really these subjects which he really wanted to study.
Okay.
So that 2 years he has to be under focus by himself. Then during that 2 years he has to work really hard to see to it that even among these specializations he might be interested in a particular one. Suppose he has taken mathematics, physics and chemistry. He must, if he is excelling or showing good progress in chemistry, then he must come to a conclusion that he should major with chemistry during graduation. So again, filtering out among the 3 subjects which he has chosen for the intermediate also, further filtering will be there. Their specialization. A person wants to do something like in theoretical physics, then he will opt for theoretical physics as his major and other things as ancillary. So such a kind of selection is possible only when the student is quite conscious during the 2 years of intermediate education, because most of the inputs the student can give only by himself. The teachers or the parents can only externally induce him to proceed further on the lines chosen by him. But the real decision should be made by the student himself. He has to consider it as a kind of a research study over himself, because those 2 years will turn the course of his entire life. Suppose instead of majoring in chemistry, if he majors in physics, there is a sea of difference. So he has to be very, very conscious. Which is my real subject? Which is where my natural instinct lies? He has to discover his instinct and his own aptitude. And if he is really successful, people like we have the Nobel laureates like C.V. Raman, then we have Subramanian Chandrasekhar. Both are Nobel laureates in physics. Their success was plainly due to their choosing the subject which is dear to them. In those days, so many other attractions were there, but they did not go by them. They stuck to their own fields. They said, this is the field which I want to excel in. And both were gifted with Nobel Prizes.
Well, sir, on the same line, as we are set to wrap up, I have a very final question for you today. So, what is the fast growing profession here in our India? So, like for this generation and for the next generation, what are the professions which are going to lead India and lead world? And what we suggest about the recent undergraduate passed out to choose something as a career, and what can be the best profession decision that they can ever take?
Nowadays, something like the fashion designing is appearing to be very, very glamorous and very, very interesting, and India has produced some of the best fashion designers also. Of late it has been producing. They are making some international brands also. Also, something connected with music or musicology they call it, and something connected with literature. These are all the areas where we can break new ground.
Okay.
Such areas have to be picked up, because following the beaten path is okay for the average student. But if the student really wants to really have a name, really wants to do something creative, then he has to work upon himself and discover that creative avenue and corresponding course which is matching with his interest and intellectual aspiration. So this is a very conscious time. From 10th to graduation is a very conscious time. So I advise all the students to focus upon themselves just for these 2 years. Then they can discover themselves. That is the greatest discovery. Actually, we can discover so many things outside, but to discover ourselves is the greatest challenge. So if a student is successful in discovering himself, then the rest of the life becomes a cakewalk for him. So that is my sincere advice for all the students.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for your suggestions for our students who are watching our show today. So while we all understand how crucial education is to shape our lives, it also has been a major problem in our country, and there are several issues that the Indian education system is grappled with, where we cannot deny the fact that the Indian government and institutions have been working to reform the existing education models. Well, however, there are still several issues which are required to be taken care of. Well, this is not a wrap on this topic. We'll discuss further in the next episode. Stay tuned to CVR English with me, Vasvi.